Hi, everyone, and welcome to Find Your Balance. I'm Sofia Valenzuela, your host. Today, I'm officially launching the English series of the podcast, a space created to support your personal growth and help you gain real insights from real stories about what does and doesn't work on the journey to creating the life that you want. We're starting off strong with an incredible guest, Francesca, a content creator with over 3 million followers, keynote speaker, podcast host, psychology expert, and social media strategist. She built a global community by turning complex psychology into simple, practical tools to boost confidence, communication, emotional healing, and improve relationships. I'm honored to have her here today, so let's dive in. To lay the foundation of everything that we're going to be talking about, can you describe to us what self sabotage is and how do people tend to self sabotage in three different ways in their daily basis?
Yeah, of course. So I think this might come as a surprise to a lot of people, but self sabotage basically means that even though you consciously want something, an unconscious part of you doesn't want that thing. So you might consciously say, I want a relationship, or I want that job, or to progress in my career. But there's another part of you that's holding you back, that doesn't want that thing. Because it thinks, if I get in a relationship, I'm gonna get hurt. Or if I get this job, then, the people around me are going to leave me because I don't know, they'll think I have no free time for them. Or, if I progress in my career, then I won't have a work-life balance. So, you have to understand what that part of you is because it always has a positive intention for you. So it's a protective part. It developed as a protection mechanism, even though it sounds like, oh, but it's sabotaging me. It's not something good. But actually, it has a positive intention. So, I think the best thing you can do is try to understand what part of me doesn't want the thing I claim I want.
Okay.
So I say I want a relationship. Okay, what are all the reasons why I don't want a relationship?
Okay.
Asking yourself that question. And then, the answer could be I'm scared I'm going to lose my independence. And then you can kind of like come from here. Once you've brought these subconscious beliefs into the light, as Carl Jung says, until you make the subconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you'll call it fate. So you have to bring these unconscious parts of you into the light and then you can work with them. You can even say thank you to them for trying to protect you, but then sort of like bring them up to the present moment and show them, hey, I can deal with the pain of someone breaking up with me, for instance. You don't need to protect me. Or, the being uncomfortable if someone judges me for getting a new job. I can deal with that. It's okay. You just have to find out what those parts of you are so you can work with them.
I love what you're saying. So it's basically acknowledging what your mind is trying to protect you from, however, changing the dialogue to I listen to what you're saying, but I decide to believe otherwise.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm actually reading a book. It's called The Power Is Within You. And they tell you how important it is to don't try to scare away your thoughts or deny them. Acknowledge them, but then reply to yourself saying what you actually want and what you actually would like to believe. So I like the way that you explain it. And it makes sense because sometimes, for example, talking a bit more about our inner dialogue, especially as a girl, I feel like we tend to self-sabotage a lot, a bit more than men, but I might be mistaken. But I see it with girlfriends and with guy friends. Guys, when it comes to jobs and applying for internships, they're like, oh, 100%, I'm going to get it. And he might not be the smartest guy of the room. However, I compare it to a girl, most of my girlfriends, and even though they're so prepared, they tend to not trust themselves that much. And it's funny how someone who you might think is not actually prepared for that job ends up getting the job, and someone who had everything to get that job ends up not getting it because of small actions they did in which I would think they were self-sabotaging their careers. So why do you think it's so hard for us women to believe in ourselves, and what are maybe one or two ways, practical ways that we can use to improve our inner dialogue?
Mm. So, yeah, it's so true. There's even studies that show that I can't remember the exact percentage, but men will apply for jobs that they're not qualified for, or, promotions that they meet like 60% of the criteria,
Yeah.
whereas women wait to meet 100% of the criteria, right? And they get it more, they ask for more promotions and then they get it, not because they're more qualified, as you said, but because they just ask for it.
Yeah.
So women need to understand, they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be 100% ready or even wait for their confidence to come. They can just do it. They
Yes.
can just choose to act, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if they feel insecure while they do it.
Mm-hmm.
They can choose to act, and then they can handle feeling uncomfortable. They don't have to feel confident to act or to make those positive decisions for themselves. And in terms of like, self-worth, and talking about like that, feeling like you're not good enough, that, a lot of women think, okay, if I achieve more, or if I do this, or I get a great job, or I get a boyfriend, or I get married, or I have kids, I achieve all these things, then I'm gonna feel good enough. But no matter how many achievements you have, if that internal feeling stays the same, which by the way is from childhood, then no matter
Yeah.
how many achievements you have, it's not going to change it. Because, that belief that I'm not good enough, it forms when you're a kid. And it usually forms, when you were either criticized for being your authentic self, or you were neglected, or you basically understood that being yourself doesn't equal love. It could equal
Wow.
rejection, it could equal criticism. And so you learned, okay, I need to do something, right? I need to either achieve something, maybe become a grade A student, or, maybe I need to put on a social mask and be happy all the time, or be funny all the time. So I get that validation and love. And then, I go on and I get a great job and I achieve this and that. And it's like, but that feeling of good enough never comes. Yeah, I might be getting some external validation, but it doesn't change that internal feeling, no matter how much I achieve. Because feeling good enough has nothing to do with external validation. It's an internal feeling. So it needs to come from the inside. You need to be able to validate yourself and feel good enough from within to actually make a change. And, there's a difference between self-worth and self-confidence. A lot of people, confuse them. Self-worth, is just your inherent value as a human that you're born with. So you're good enough just because you exist. And I like to give this example, think of two babies. One is mischievous and cries a lot, and the other one is like really good and quiet. Which one is more valuable? Both, exactly. Like, you cannot say. They're both valuable, and that's each and every one of us. But we falsely learn that, oh, I need to do something to get to the level of value that maybe other people are at. So, imposter syndrome also forms this way, and like a lot of problems that we have, psychological ones, come from that feeling of not good enough.
It makes complete sense. And what do you think is the most common way in which we tend to self-sabotage ourselves on a daily basis? So maybe something that you might not recognize, but I would put as an example, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. I believe one way in which we self-sabotage is that whenever we have something good happening to us, we keep thinking in the back of our minds, at least me, oh, something bad's going to happen. So I stop that good thing that was about to happen from happening, to avoid this tragic ending in a way. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I knew it wasn't going to happen anyways. So yeah, what would be one way in which people tend to self-sabotage and they might not know that what they're doing is self-sabotage?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really common, by the way, thinking that if something good happens to me, then something bad must happen after, right? Like, bad follows good.
Guilty.
So it's super, super common. And then people start to, yeah, self sabotage themselves because they would rather feel in control and feel like they can predict that what happens than feel like they're out of control. So I'd rather know that something bad will happen, sabotage myself and know that for sure what will happen than not know. And they're so used to, like either drama or living in a toxic environment or bad things happening to them that it feels uncomfortable. They're so used to chaos that peace has become an uncomfortable feeling. Why is it so quiet? Like what's going on? And it's a process of rewiring your brain to expect peace and to expect good things and know that no matter what happens to you, even if something bad happens, right? Just being able to trust yourself that you'll be able to handle it. And then, in terms of other ways that people self sabotage, I mean, if we talk about, for instance, romantic relationships, it could be perfectionism. So, or really high, unrealistic standards. Perfectionism can also come in other areas of life, like work or friendships or career, anything like that. But for instance, if we're talking about romantic relationships, a lot of people will be like, oh yeah, I have really high standards and no one's ever good enough for me, when actually they're just scared of intimacy and vulnerability. And unconsciously, they're using that as an excuse to avoid intimacy. Another thing people do when it comes to romantic relationships is sort of like a covert avoidance, and that's how they self-sabotage. They will only go for people that are unavailable, or they'll fantasize, like limerence, obsession. They'll obsess over people who they cannot be with, and they're escaping into romantic fantasy, but they chose that unavailable person because they're unavailable, because they are scared of intimacy, and they're using that person as an excuse. So, there's many other ways people self
Wow.
sabotage. Yeah, in a work setting, it could be, when you're a perfectionist and you keep procrastinating and you leave things right up to the next, the last minute. And then you're like, well, I can't get it perfect because I only have like an hour to do this.
Yeah.
And it gives you an excuse to not get it perfect. That's another example.
Okay.
So, I mean, I could talk endlessly about this, but there's many
Yeah.
ways we do it. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. So, picking someone who's emotionally unavailable, procrastinating, and that first one you mentioned, which was it?
Romantic fantasy.
And the romantic
Yeah.
fantasy. So, looking back at the romantic aspect of self sabotage, why do you think some women go for men that reinforce the negative beliefs they have about themselves, even though they are aware that they shouldn't be with this type of man? Why do they keep going back to the same person, even if they hurt them? Like, it's something that I'm trying to understand, even with friends. I look at their relationships or my relationships from the past, and I'm like, why would I ever fall for someone who makes me feel like I'm not worth even a message? I will be excited when I get an Instagram reaction, or even that 3 a.m. booty call message makes me happy. And in contrast with someone who is super loving and giving, I'm like, ew, no.
Yeah.
Like, why does this happen?
I mean, there's a lot of things to unpack there, but in terms of like, why do we go for people that mirror what we think about ourselves? There's like a psychological concept, it's called congruence. And humans have a deep need for congruence, which means my reality, my internal world matches what you think about me and how you perceive me. And, if, let's say, I think I'm not good enough, and then you come and you think I'm lovable and good enough, then there's like a cognitive dissonance. There's a mismatch in our beliefs. And it's like, oh, but you don't know me then. And it feels like unfamiliar. It feels like something's off. Like you don't see me for who I am because I know I'm not good enough. Whereas if I don't think I'm not good enough and then you think I'm not good enough, then, oh, great, we're on the same page because we both think that about me. And then it feels familiar. In a weird way, it feels
Safe.
right. So, that's why it happens. And we tend to, this pattern of going for, like, being icked out by people who are available and who want to be with us is really common when you are either overt avoidant or covert avoidant, like I was saying before. You pretend to, or I mean, not even pretend, but you consciously want a relationship, but unconsciously you're scared of being in a relationship, and so you will choose someone who you cannot be with, and then someone who wants to be with you, you feel scared. So a very specific example, for instance, would be, let's say, a woman who feels like when she gets in a relationship, she loses herself. Or she feels like maybe she's trapped because she cannot set boundaries and she cannot get herself to leave a relationship or say no, or she finds it really difficult. And so, a part of her wants to be in a relationship, but then another part doesn't want to, because if she gets in one, then she feels trapped and like she cannot leave that relationship. So, people who want to be with her will freak her out.
Okay.
And then there's another aspect to this. When we have experienced in our childhoods, and, I keep going back to childhood trauma, but it really influences our life. When you've experienced, let's say, in your family, your parents making you feel like you're not good enough or criticizing you, then unconsciously we try to replicate those experiences later in adult life to sort of change the story.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go for someone unavailable who makes me feel like I'm not good enough. And unconsciously, I think that if I manage to win or earn their love, I'll finally be worthy.
Okay.
And it doesn't work. It doesn't work because even if you get that person, what happens most of the times, you'll lose interest in them. And then even if you stay with them, then that internal feeling will just come back. You might get that instant gratification or like dopamine of like, yes, I got them. But I don't know, give it a few weeks and you'll start feeling like you're not good enough again, because that internal belief hasn't changed and it cannot be influenced by external circumstances, as I was saying before.
Wow, that's really eye-opening. It's crazy how it all links back to your childhood and how it's so important to do childhood work, inner child work, and inner child healing. Then if I could ask you, what's one way in which someone can break the cycle of going back to the wrong person or approaching the wrong person or pushing away the good person? So ways in which we can heal our relationship with love and being loved.
So first and foremost, you have to understand yourself and like these mechanisms that make you push away people or, go towards the wrong people. So you have to understand these protective parts of you. Like, what am I scared of? And that's the biggest question. What am I scared of? What parts of me don't want to be in a relationship? Understand and work with those. And then, for instance, if we go back to the example of the woman that's scared of being trapped, right? Then she can work on setting boundaries, for instance, and trusting herself that she will be setting boundaries in her relationships. So she will never be trapped. she always has the possibility to leave. So she needs to understand those patterns and heal them. And then the second thing is you need to start making really conscious choices when it comes to your relationships. So, especially if you've had a pattern of going for toxic or unavailable people, then you being attracted to someone 10 out of 10 is usually a red flag, because attraction, sexual attraction, is more often than not, it's like those butterflies are just an anxiety response.
Wow.
That roller coaster is like
Yes.
hot and cold and hot and cold, and you think, oh, I'm so obsessed with them, I'm so in love with them. But actually, it's just a stress response and anxiety, and it's the chase that is giving you those feelings. But you don't actually love them. It's not about the other person, it's about you.
Wow. Oh, you left me without words because it's so hard to do conscious decisions. Because I feel like when you meet someone and you start to like someone, there's something inside your stomach, your gut feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and you deep inside know when you should go for him and when you shouldn't.
Yeah.
And you keep trying to tell yourself like, no, it's anxiety, or it's I'm wrong, or it's just because of like the past. But I feel like we do know. I think at least us girls, we kind of have like this, how do they call it, sixth sense,
Yeah.
that I think it's important to listen to your body, because whatever you don't do, your body will try to manifest in different ways, whether there is like
Absolutely.
stomachache or acne or so, because that's what happened to me, that's what happens to friends. Is that a thing, a way in which your body manifests whatever you're not actually doing? Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I understand what you mean. So it's like when we repress things internally, or we don't take care of ourselves. This happens a lot with people, being burnt out or getting sick. It's like if you don't know when to stop, your body will tell you when to stop.
It's crazy, yeah.
So you'll get sick, for instance, because you don't know how to give your body a break. So your body will be like, all right, then I'm giving myself a break. I'm gonna be sick and I'm gonna be burnt out and in bed, so I'm forcing you to take a break because you don't know how to take care of me. Now, going back to the just conscious choices, I wanted to add something
Of course.
else. So, when it comes to making these conscious choices, as I said, 10 out of 10 for most people is a red flag. What I would go for, especially if you've had patterns of going for unavailable toxic people, go for someone who's like a 6 or 7 out of 10 level of attraction.
Interesting. Okay. Why?
So, because you still need to be attracted to them, of course. I'm not going to say go for someone you're not attracted to, but 10 out of 10 attraction is a no-go for you. So, you have to make a conscious choice for someone who is healthy and available, and that person is not going to make you feel those butterflies, and is not going to make you feel that really intense obsession
That's true.
that you feel with someone who's toxic, right? So that's why I say 6 out of 7. It might feel more calm, a bit more maybe boring even, it doesn't feel as intense, but that's a good thing. That's a good thing that it doesn't feel intense. You want to feel that peace and that safety with that person. Like the last thing you want to feel is like up and down roller coaster.
100%. That's so interesting. And looking at relationships, I find that some female relationships end up being like loving relationships, and you end up behaving as if you were in a loving relationship with your girlfriends. What are some healthy ways to put boundaries with your female friendships, and why do boundaries feel so uncomfortable to put in place?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of boundaries, I think respect is the biggest one. So, what I mean, no gossiping, around your female friends, or, you tell me a secret and then I go off and tell someone else. Something else that can happen is just like microaggressions, when you have resentment for a friend and then you don't know how to communicate directly, or you're scared to communicate directly, which goes into boundary setting as well. So, you build up that passive aggressiveness. So it might come out as backhanded compliments or, these little microaggressions. And why is it so hard to set boundaries, especially for women? It's because we think that if we communicate directly and set a boundary, like our basically deepest fear is that the friendship will break or that person won't be able to take it or tolerate the boundary, and they'll be mad at us and they'll reject us, and the friendship will break or it won't survive the boundary setting. That's like the most common fear. And that does happen sometimes because a lot of people are emotionally immature, so they cannot tolerate being wrong or having done something wrong because they associate their identity and their behaviors, they match them as if they're the same thing, whereas actually your identity is separate from your behavior, where as in you can do something bad and you're not a bad person.
Yes.
But they think, oh, if I do something bad, it means I'm a bad friend. It's like, no, you can still be a good friend overall,
Yeah.
and have done something that upsets me, but they
100%.
can't tolerate it, so the friendship breaks. But in mature friendships, they should be able to tolerate that and to understand your point of view and change. So, it's that fear of rejection or that fear of abandonment even that can come up. So that's why you don't want to set the boundary, because they think, oh, that person will leave me if I set a boundary. So you have to prove to yourself, you have to prove to your mind that you can do it and it will be okay. You can set a boundary even if it feels uncomfortable, and it's gonna be fine. Either because that friendship is stable enough to sustain it, and that person is mature enough and deserves to be into your life, and then they accept and the relationship improves, because boundaries aren't just to protect us, they're also to protect the relationship, right? So it improves the relationship altogether. Or if that person is so immature that they don't want to be friends with us because we set a boundary in place, a healthy boundary in place, then you find out that actually I'm better off without them.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people are scared also because maybe they only have one friend or they only have two friends. So then if they set that boundary and their relationship gets ruined, then they have no one else. So it's that loneliness that comes into place. And that's why it's important to, build a support network around you. So if I know that maybe this relationship is a bit toxic or unstable, or I don't feel like I can express my needs, and I'm trying to slowly back off, but then I don't have anything else around me, I have no other friends to support me, then I'm not going to be able to leave, right? So that's why it's important to start building those friendships, those other relationships, while you are in that friendship. And once you have that support network, it's way easier to step out and it's way easier to risk setting boundaries.
Yeah, I completely agree. Moving towards consumer behavior, how do you think self-sabotage sneaks into our spending habits? I find that some people that self-sabotage a lot in different areas of their life, the financial aspect is quite important, and they often try to buy quick fixes. What do you think?
Yeah, so, when it comes to behaviors like overspending or these quick fixes you are talking about, you have to understand that it's just a coping mechanism. That's just the effect. It's not a problem. It's not the root cause, right? Some people deal with it by doing drugs or by overeating or through other ways. Others do it through shopping and overbuying, right? And it's just the coping mechanism or the way that your nervous system found to soothe itself. And it's not a great strategy, but it's the only strategy it found. why did it find that strategy? Well, I don't know. Maybe when you were little, the only way your dad expressed love for you, it was through buying you things. So now you associate love with buying things, right? That's a common experience that a lot of people have. Or, when it comes to overeating or, buying food,
Binge eating would be one as
binge
well.
eating is like, how do most people receive love from their mom? Oh, through cooking and food, right? So we have these associations in our mind of like, okay, shopping or food or whatever it is equals love, and is the easiest method we found to soothe our nervous system. But what you need to focus on is not these behaviors. Yeah, you can try to control your overspending or overeating all you want, but if you don't solve the root cause, like, what's the emotion underneath that is causing you to do these things? For instance, it could be a deep sense of loneliness that is making you buy more clothes, that is giving you a sense of, like, I don't know, connection or love or dopamine. So what is it underneath? If it's loneliness, then I need to understand, like, what is it? And then what are some better strategies to meet that need or that unfulfilled emotion, right? Maybe I'm going to go make a few new friends. I'm going to go to a new community or go on Bumble BFF and find a new friend if I'm feeling lonely. Or, if it's something else, I'm like stressed out, then how can I decrease my stress? Right, in more productive ways. So you need to replace that strategy with something healthier if you actually want it to go away. It's not just about like, okay, I'm gonna just control my behavior and not buy anything. Okay, but the emotion is still gonna be there, and then in a moment of weakness, you're gonna go all out.
Yeah, what you mentioned is true, and I just remembered in the book Atomic Habits, they tell you when you want to get rid of a bad habit, you need to find a habit to replace it. So it's a great way. So identifying what you associate this self-sabotaging behavior and switching it to something that actually benefits you. Yeah. Now, I have a quick question. So when it comes to decision making, what makes the switch between what makes someone, a consumer, buy or not buy something? So talking about associations. What's an ethical way in which business owners or entrepreneurs can use psychology to make people buy what they're trying to sell?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, by this point, I think everyone knows that sales are just psychology, right? It's just human psychology, and it's all emotional. It's all emotional. And I think what sellers need to understand is that when they want to sell something, they need to understand this kind of like human principle, this behavioral principle. People go towards pleasure less than they try to run away from pain. So they're more likely to run away from pain than to go towards pleasure. So to give you a practical example, if I see something that might bring me pleasure, it's like, cool, I might or I might not buy it. But if I see something that can take away my pain, that's an instant sell.
Okay.
So
crazy.
Yeah, so it's focusing on like, what is your deep pain? Like buyers should focus on this. Like, what is your deepest pain point? Like, what is it that you're trying to run away from? And then find a solution for that. So, it's a no-brainer for you to buy it. So, if I see, let's say, I have a problem with acne, let's say, and I feel really unattractive and it's really stressing me out, and then I find this product that makes my acne go away, then I'm instantly gonna buy it, right? Whereas if it's just like another shade of lip gloss, for instance, and I have 10 more, and maybe it's nice, but it doesn't really solve my pain point, right? So you have to figure out what those pain points are. And In terms of other like psychological tricks, I think, Robert Cialdini has a bunch of them. So I encourage people to look it up if they want to learn more about this. But some principles are, for instance, scarcity. So something becomes more valuable if you don't have as many of it, right? So if you go to a shopping site and you see, oh, there's only one more item left, right, of this thing, it makes you want to buy it because, like, oh my God, this is scarce. It must be valuable. Another principle is when other people buy, I forgot what it's called, but like when other people buy it as well. So social proof. So another principle is social proof. And for instance, if you see, let's go to a lip gloss, right? Everyone's buying Wonder Skin now. If you see that like 1,000 other people are buying Wonder Skin, you're more likely to buy it as well, if instead of you being the first person to discover that and having no social proof. So having that evidence, that other people are buying it and it works, and it's a good product. And then I'll give you one more, which is extremely powerful, which is identity buying. So, people buy the identity, not the product. So, for instance, a gym studio who's selling Pilates is not actually selling Pilates. It's selling the identity that it gives you, the clean girl aesthetic. Or, a shop that's selling matcha is not actually selling matcha. It's selling, like the identity, that Pinterest girl, or, a gym studio selling workout classes. It's selling the identity of being a fit person. So, being able to associate your product with an identity, a luxury handbag, it's not just a luxury handbag. It's a social, economic, identity again. So that's another powerful way.
I love this. And I'm asking because I think there's more and more women that start to open their businesses. So every year there's more entrepreneurial women that are entrepreneurs. And something that is linked to this topic is, how do you think us women can step up into leadership? How can we advocate for ourselves, whether it's asking for a raise or speaking in a business meeting where there's only men, without being perceived as masculine? Because there's this fight between feminine and masculine energy, and I believe I'm a very feminine girl. But the other day there was a guy who was telling me, like, your energy is so masculine, and maybe that's why you're single. And I disagree. I think it's about how you act, but without losing that feminine way. But what do you think is the right thing to do?
So, going back to what I was saying regarding, men will be able to state their opinion, in a business meeting, even if it's half formed. Whereas a woman needs to feel like she has the perfect thing to say or the most brilliant thing to say, and only then she will speak up, right? So, what I encourage women to do is just think, what would a man do in this situation?
Interesting. Okay.
What would a man do? And then give yourself the permission to have the audacity to just do that thing, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable, because you don't have to be perfect. So many women, are trying to be perfect, and only then they'll be a leader, when they have all the qualifications, or only then they'll apply to the job, or only then they will speak up in a meeting when they have the perfect thing to say. No, you can do it when it's half formed, or when you have half the qualifications, and you can trust yourself that you will grow into the role. You will be able to become a good leader and learn, even if you don't have all the tools and resources right now. Just trusting yourself that you'll be able to do it. It's just, that self-trust. And also experiencing something like that, having the experience of applying for a job you're not prepared for, or speaking up in a meeting and seeing that nothing bad happens and you can do it, and actually you'll be more appreciated at work, or you'll get a higher salary. So we call these corrective emotional experiences. So it's not just intellectualizing things, it's actually experiencing them and proving to your brain that something good will come out of it. So that
Yes.
rewires your brain. And then, in terms of feminine, masculine energy, I think this is more of a spiritual concept, not so much psychological. But, if we're talking just like psychology, we all have traditionally feminine, traditionally masculine qualities, and I think a lot of people get stuck in them. And a lot of women are trying, oh, I don't want to be too masculine or too feminine. I think they should just know that we all have all of them, and it's okay in certain times in your life or certain relationships, even, or certain contexts, to bring more of those traditionally masculine or feminine
Depending the
qualities.
situation, no?
Sorry?
Depending like the
On
situation.
the situation, and it's fine. You don't have to always be feminine. It's fine to also have that traditionally masculine those qualities.
I agree. I think this was an amazing and very insightful conversation. I'm sure you're going to help so many girls listening to this podcast, so many guys. One last question. For someone who's beginning their self-help journey and they tend to self-sabotage, what is one book or one podcast or one practice they can start today to initiate this healing?
So, okay, so I'll give you another practice when it comes to self-sabotage. So if you find yourself, doing things that you would like to stop doing, another question to ask yourself is, how is this benefiting me? How is this behavior benefiting me? What is it bringing to me? Right? So, I'm overspending or I'm overbuying things, How is this benefiting me? And it could be like, oh, there's no way it's benefiting me. But yes, it is. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. So finding out what that thing is and then finding out other ways to meet that need.
I love that.
And yeah, if people want to learn more about relationships and healing, they can follow me on Instagram or my
100%.
podcast. We can link in down below at Francesca Psychology. But yeah, happy to answer any other questions or.
Thank you so much for coming to Finding Your Balance. Definitely go follow her. I have been following you for quite a long time. I actually started following her before I even met her in person. She gives amazing relationship, personal, work advice, all linked to psychology, because at the end, it all goes back to science, right? And if you are able to understand your brain and you're able to dominate to a certain extent your emotions, you're able to manage your life in a healthier way.
Thank you so
thank
much.
you very much and see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe and like.